My name is Creighton Hicks. I'm in vSphere Product Marketing. I actually do have the honor of having one of the more memorable email addresses here at VMware. It's, like many others, first initial, last name. So in case that's needed, it's pretty easy to keep in mind, chicks@vmware.com. Joined here today by my colleague, Alberto Farnato, also in vSphere Product Marketing. He will walk us through the second half of today's presentation. Okay, so the standard disclaimer slide that we have to show. And then on the objectives for today's session. So this session is an advanced level session that covers how you manage licensing in vSphere 5 environments. And we hope that over the course of this presentation, we'll be able to go over all four of those objectives that we outlined there. But one thing that I do want to note is there at the bottom that this session does assume a basic fundamental understanding of the vSphere 5 licensing model. So we will go over a little bit of that as we go through the presentation, and we do have some resources that we call out at the end of the presentation, some of which are even here at VMworld that you can leverage. And the structure for today's presentation is going to go through an upgrade process from a prior version of vSphere to vSphere 5, and the 4 key points in time that you need to take into account licensing considerations. So first of all, it's evaluating your licensing needs, and then 2, retrieving license keys through the VMware licensing portal. And then after upgrading or deploying vSphere 5, the third point of licensing consideration is on deploying those vSphere 5 licenses. And then finally, fourth, it is monitoring and managing your vSphere 5 licensing needs on an ongoing basis. And then keeping to that in mind, we're going to start with talking about evaluating your licensing needs. And for that, we have the a free standalone tool called the vSphere Licensing Advisor. So the vSphere Licensing Advisor, it's available on VMware.com at the URL shown. And it works with VI3.5, vSphere 4.0, and vSphere 4.1 environments. And it connects to one or more vCenters and calculates the VRAM usage and the VRAM capacity that you would encounter if you were to upgrade to vSphere 5. And then a bit about the requirements that the tool needs. So the tool is written in Java, and so it requires GRE 1.6 or higher, and it installs on several flavors of Windows that we have outlined there on the slide. Now, as far as supported environments, it supports vSphere 4 hosts underneath a vCenter Server 4, and it also supports VI3.5 hosts under a vCenter 2.5. One thing that is not supported with this tool is VI3.5 hosts underneath a vCenter Server 4. And then also, since this tool is designed for helping you understand your licensing needs before you go to vSphere 5, vSphere 5 and vCenter 5 are not supported environments as well. Now, one thing to call out there at the bottom is that the tool does connect to vCenter Server, requiring a standard vCenter account. And there is one specific permission that is required for the tool to run, and that is the global licenses permission. And that's required in addition to the standard read-only role in vCenter. And with that in mind, when you start up the tool, you'll see a login screen similar to this. And there are really 2 key points here on the screen, 2 ways that you can connect to your vCenter servers. The first on the top there is where you can enter a single vCenter server host name or IP address, login and password, and it'll connect you to a single vCenter server. And then at the bottom there's a way where you can select a plain text file that has multiple vCenter servers, 1 per line, that you wish to connect to. Now, if you do want to connect to multiple vCenter servers, if you have an environment that has multiple vCenter servers, you can use the top method here, and then on the main screen, there's a way where you can add additional vCenter servers one at a time later. And then on that main screen, here we see it, and there's really 4 key points of this main screen that I'd like to walk you through. The first is the summary bar that you see there at the top, and the summary bar is showing you the % of VRAM capacity that is being used by each of the additions that were encountered by the tool. The second is the usage details table, which is showing you details on the usage of those environments that are encountered. The third is a list of vCenter servers that where a connection was attempted to and whether the connection and login was successful or not. And then finally, there is the button to add another vCenter server, to connect to another vCenter server. And if you click this, you'll get a pop-up that will show the same 2 methods, both adding a single vCenter server or selecting a plain text file. Now, one of the first things you'll note is that you see one entry in this tool for each edition. And that's because, as with the vSphere 5 licensing model, each edition pools its VRAM separately. Now, what that means is that the VRAM usage and the VRAM capacity for each edition is tracked separately. And then there's two additional things to point out here. The first is that the tool is showing you the vSphere 5 equivalent edition. Now, what that means is that the edition that the tool is showing you is the edition that you would be entitled to if you were to upgrade to vSphere 5. So, for example, if you're running vSphere 4 Advanced, that would show up in the tool as Enterprise, because that is the edition of vSphere you would be entitled to if you were to upgrade that vSphere 4 Advanced to vSphere 5. And then the other thing to note is what you see in the far right column is the VRAM entitlement per license does vary based on the edition that you have. And focusing on the summary bar now. So the summary bar, again, shows you the percent of VRAM capacity that's being used for each of the editions that are encountered. And so if the amount of VRAM that's being used is less than the capacity that it's entitled to for that edition, namely the percentage is under 100%, it'll show in the tool as green. Likewise, if the amount of VRAM that's being used in that edition is greater than the capacity that's entitled, it will show up as red, and it would be greater than 100%. Now, this tool is showing you it's generating a report based on a single point in time, and that has two implications. The first is that the tool is not updating in real time. What it does is it connects to a vCenter server, pulls that data, and then immediately disconnects from that vCenter server. So if there is a change on that vCenter server's environment after the data is pulled, it would not be reflected in the tool. Okay? So if there is a material change in your environment, you need to rerun the report. The second thing is that the second implication is that the tool is, again, generating a report on a single point in time. It is not calculating an average or generating a report over average usage over any sort of time period. So it's giving you a single point in time look at your VRAM usage and VRAM capacity. And then when we think about the percent VRAM used and how that is calculated, we can look at the usage details table, and there's a couple key columns here where we can kind of see how that is calculated. So the first column here that I'd like to call out is the total licenses column. And the reason this is important is that every license that's loaded into vCenter server adds VRAM capacity, whether or not it's deployed. So in this example here, we have 16 total licenses that's loaded into this vCenter server, of which only 6 of them are currently deployed and powering on CPUs. But it's all 16 that factor into this next column, which is the calculation of VRAM capacity. So VRAM capacity is the number of total licenses loaded times the entitlement that is available to that edition. In this example, we're working with the standard edition, and that standard edition is entitled to 32 gigs of VRAM per license. So it's all 16, not just the 6 that are deployed, that goes into the calculation there. And that gives us the capacity side of the equation. The other side is the usage side. And for that, we know that VRAM is the sum of the configured memory of all the powered-on virtual machines. And in this case, in this environment, we're running 68 gigs of VRAM. And that brings us to the final calculation here, which is the percentage of VRAM capacity that's being used. And that is simply the usage divided by the capacity. So in this case, 68 divided by 512 gives us 13%. And as I mentioned, only powered-on virtual machines count in the vSphere 5 licensing model. However, with this tool, you can perform a what-if scenario and additionally count either your suspended and or your powered-off virtual machines as if they were powered on. And to do that, you select the Display Settings menu in this tool, and then you can select the appropriate checkbox to count either those suspended or powered-off virtual machines. Now, if you do that, you'll see this filter bar appear above the usage details table, this gray bar at the top. And that filter bar is going to tell you what filters are currently being applied or if there are any deviations from the normal calculation that's being performed. And so here you see that both suspended and powered-off VMs are being counted. And you can click the black X to remove those, or you can click Clear All to remove all of those changes. And then one important thing to keep in mind with the vSphere 5 licensing model is that linked vCenters pool VRAM. Now what that means is that if you have 2 vCenter servers that are linked together, the total VRAM capacity would be the capacity of each vCenter server summed together, and likewise, the total VRAM used would be the sum of the usage of each individual vCenter server. Now, this tool does not gather information on whether vCenter servers are linked or not, so we present the data to you in two different ways. The first here, highlighted in orange, is as if each vCenter server is not linked to anything, as if it's on a standalone basis. So here are all the calculations as on each vCenter server standalone. And then we also present the information as if each vCenter server with the same addition is linked together. And so you'll see here on the Enterprise Plus, for example, column, again, the VRAM capacity is the sum of the VRAM capacity of the two vCenter servers underneath it, and the same with the VRAM capacity. So again, this tool is not able to auto-log in to other vCenter servers that are linked together. So if you do have a linked group of vCenter servers, you do need to have the tool connect to each one of those vCenter servers if you want to see that entire environment. And then one important scenario to highlight here is, what if you have a single vCenter server that is using more VRAM than it by itself is entitled to, but you have other vCenter servers in your environment that have excess capacity. They're using less VRAM than their capacity is entitled to. If you run into a scenario like that, you'll see something like this shown here. You'll see the addition for standard here is shown in green. The overall VRAM usage is less than the VRAM capacity that addition is entitled to. However, you see this red exclamation mark. And that's telling you that here, in this example, we have a single vCenter server, the one with the long red bar that's highlighted presently, that is using more VRAM than it on its own is entitled to. In fact, in this example, this vCenter server is using 146% of its capacity. Now, there's another vCenter server below it that is using a fraction of its entitlement. And if you were to pool those together, if they were to share their capacity, they would actually get what you see in the long green bar, which is only 49% being used. So if you run into a scenario like this with the tool, you need to ensure that those vCenter servers can be linked together. And then another thing to keep in mind on the vSphere 5 licensing model is that VRAM is capped at 96 gigs of VRAM per VM. Now, what that means is that you can still create a VM with up to 1 terabyte of configured memory, and you can use all 1 terabyte of that configured memory. But if you do so, it's only going to consume at most 96 gigs of VRAM from the VRAM capacity pool. And to highlight this, we have the screenshot here. At the bottom, you can see a screenshot from the vSphere client. And if you see the red highlighted bar there, VM5, we've created it with 128 gigs of configured memory. Now, if you look at that in the vSphere licensing advisor, just like in the vSphere 5 licensing model itself, you can see that this same VM, VM5, is only counting as 96 gigs of VRAM. So again, you can still create a virtual machine in vSphere 5 that has up to 1 terabyte of configured memory. But if you do, it'll only count as at most 96 gigs of VRAM. And then the last thing I want to talk about with the vSphere licensing advisor is what happens if the tool encounters additions where the vSphere 5 licensing model or VRAM entitlements do not apply, namely if it encounters vSphere desktop or desktop editions of vSphere. So if the tool does encounter those additions, it's going to put them in the other category, and it will not compute a percent of VRAM being used. It'll show up as NA. Now, the VRAM usage can still be calculated. It can still sum the configured memory of all the powered-on virtual machines. But the VRAM capacity cannot be calculated, again, because this addition that it's running into does not have any sort of VRAM entitlement assigned to it. And then while we're on the topic of desktop virtualization in vSphere 5, there's really 3 key considerations to keep in mind. The first is for new deployments. And for that, we have a new offering called vSphere Desktop. So vSphere Desktop is licensed based on the number of powered-on desktop virtual machines. It is for desktop virtualization only, and it has unlimited VRAM entitlements, and it's feature equivalent to Enterprise Plus, our highest edition of vSphere. So that's the first consideration. The second consideration is for existing deployments. For existing deployments, if you have existing vSphere licenses that are used only for desktop virtualization and you have active SNS, you can upgrade to vSphere 5 with unlimited VRAM entitlements. Now, the one thing that's very important to keep in mind here is that those hosts that are running desktop virtualization only that fit this scenario must be managed by a separate, isolated vCenter server. This vCenter server cannot have any sort of server workloads running underneath it. And then the third consideration here is on the VMware View Bundles, which is a comprehensive end-to-end desktop virtualization solution that includes both the vSphere desktop that you see there and vCenter Server. And that takes us through the first part on evaluating the licensing needs. The second part is on retrieving your vSphere 5 license keys. Now, vSphere 5 requires new license keys, so your vSphere 4 or even VI35 keys need to be upgraded to vSphere 5. And for that, we have the VMware licensing portal. And you can see the URL there listed on the slide, and you log into this using your VMware account credentials. And there's 4 key uses for this. The 4 key uses are, first of all, you can determine your eligibility for upgrading to a higher edition, or higher version, sorry. The second is that you can actually upgrade to vSphere 5. The third thing you can do is deactivate your old vSphere 4 keys. And then the fourth thing is that you can downgrade vSphere 5 keys to either vSphere 4, 4.1, or VI35 keys. Now, if you do downgrade from vSphere 5 to a prior version of vSphere or VI35, it's important to keep in mind that the vSphere 5 licensing model does not apply. Instead, you would be subject to the EULA terms and licensing model of the version that you downgrade to. Now, when you log into the licensing portal, you'll see a screen similar to this, and you'll be automatically alerted if you have any additions that are available for upgrade to vSphere 5. And to see those, you click here on the Licensing Keys tab at the top, and then you look in the Alerts section to see if you have a message similar to this that will tell you if you have any product additions that are eligible for upgrade. You can then scroll down to the License Keys section and see specifically which additions are available for upgrade. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that this list will only include vSphere 4 or newer license keys. If you had purchases of VI3, those would have already had vSphere 4 keys generated for them, and so those auto-generated vSphere 4 keys should be seen here. Now, if you want to go and upgrade to vSphere 5, the first thing you do is go back to that Alerts section, find the Take Action button here, and you can click on that. And then you go down to the license key area that you see here, and you'll see the specific additions and license keys that are eligible for upgrade. And then after clicking Upgrade, it'll ask you which specific license keys you want to upgrade. You can select all or individual license keys. And then you'll get a pop-up that looks similar to this. So a license key can have multiple CPUs worth of capacity inside of it, so you can choose to upgrade the entire key automatically, or you can choose a subset of the CPU capacity to upgrade. And so you select which you choose to do here, and then click Continue. And then you'll be given a review pop-up where you'll see the actions that are about to be undertaken that we've highlighted there in red. And then you'll also be asked to review and accept the warning here, which is saying that you need the keys that you're about to upgrade from will be deactivated, and you need to discontinue use of those keys that you're upgrading from. And then once you click Accept, you'll be back to the same page, and instead you'll see that you have vSphere 5 license keys available. Now, one thing to note here is you'll see the Downgrade Available button, and you can, as I mentioned before, downgrade from vSphere 5 to prior versions of vSphere, vSphere 4, vSphere 4.1, or even VI35. And if you do choose to downgrade, it's important to remember that the vSphere 5 licensing model doesn't apply. What instead you'd be subject to is the EULA terms and licensing model of the version that you downgrade to. And that takes us through the first two parts. I'd like to turn it over to my colleague Alberto Farinato to walk us through the second half. Thank you.
Thanks. Morning, everybody. So the next couple of sections of this presentation will go over how to deploy and manage the vSphere 5 licenses, and lastly, how to monitor your usage through a couple of tools, vCenter Server itself and another free add-on that we'll make available pretty soon that will complement the built-in capabilities of vCenter Server 5. So at this point in the upgrade process, you have retrieved your keys, you've done your evaluation of your prior environment, so you have a pretty good idea of what's going to happen once you upgrade all your hosts. You have upgraded vCenter Server 5 from 4 to 5, and at least one or more vSphere hosts. And you're ready to deploy your vSphere 5 keys. For those of you familiar with vSphere 4, you will find that the process of deploying new vSphere 5 keys is very much similar to what it was for vSphere 4. It starts by accessing the licensing module of vCenter. Under the Administration tab, there's an icon called Licensing, so you enter there. And the first thing you're going to see is this screen that lists out all the vSphere hosts that you upgraded, as well as your vCenter server. If you haven't added a key to any of those hosts, as well as vCenter server, in the background you see that they will be listed as in evaluation mode. This means that you have a 60 days window to deploy your actual licenses. Now, to start the deployment process of your licenses, let's zoom in a little bit. You start by clicking this button here on the upper left corner, Manage vSphere Licenses, and this will start the wizard process. On the right side, you'll essentially paste the license keys that you retrieved from the portal and press Add License Keys, which will take you to the next step in the assigning process. In this stage, you pick your hosts on one side and assign a specific license key on the right side. So let's zoom in a little bit to see how that looks like. You want to click on Show Unlicensed Assets. This will bring up all the vSphere hosts under the ESX tab that are currently in evaluation mode and are waiting to have a license key assigned. You select one, and on the right side, you select the corresponding license key that you want to assign to that particular host. As you can see on the right side, you have a list of license keys that you can pick from, depending on whether you have a single license key or multiple license keys or multiple editions, depending on which edition you want to. You can do this process all at the same time. Now, each license key carries a CPU capacity. You probably are already familiar with it. One single key can be used to license multiple CPUs and even multiple hosts. Every time you assign a host to a key, the host will consume a CPU capacity equal to the number of physical CPU that it contains. So in this particular case here, we have a host with 2 CPUs, and it will consume from the vSphere 5 standard key that we have here on the right side, those 2 from the total of 6 that license carried. You can see the details here at the bottom. On the left side, you find the details of the CPU and the number of cores per CPU related to the host that you selected. On the right side, you see the main data points around the license key that you're using. So this key came with 6 CPUs in terms of capacity. You used 2 to license the host, and so you still have 4 available to license it for additional CPUs. You also see how much VRAM each CPU carries in the license key. Now, one question that we get often is, can I partially license a host? Meaning, if I have 2 or more CPUs in a host, can I license just 1, or maybe 2 if I have 4, for example? No, you can't. You have to license all the CPUs within a host. So once you have selected and assigned all your keys, the next step in this process is just to review the summary of your assignments. And this is essentially the last stage in the process. You see here in this blown up window here is the list of hosts that you have in your environment with the related key that you selected. And if everything is fine, then you just click Finish, and that will essentially end the assignment process, right? So at this point in the upgrade process, you have a fully operational environment, fully licensed. You're essentially ready to load virtual machines. So in the next phase, what you're going to want to do is learn how to manage and monitor your vSphere 5 licenses. And as we said, there are essentially 2 tools to do this. There's a built-in monitoring capabilities within vCenter Server 5, which we'll go over in a moment. And then we'll review an additional tool that we're about to release. It's an add-on that you can download and install, similar to what you do with Update Manager, for example. that will bring additional capabilities in terms of historical trending and view of your VRAM consumption. Before diving into the tools themselves, I'd like to review a little bit the key principles of licensing compliance. Right? There are essentially two key rules that you have to keep in mind with respect to vSphere 5 licensing compliance. The first one is that each CPU must have at least one vSphere 5 license assigned to it. This is no different than vSphere 4, pretty straightforward, and you take care of it during the deployment phase. The second key condition is that your VRAM pool capacity at any given point in time must be greater or equal to the 12 months moving average of your daily maximums of VRAM usage. Right? This is kind of a long kind of definition, but what it means is that compliance is not based on daily usage, but it's based on the 12 months moving average of your usage. The 12 months moving average is calculated essentially taking an average over the last 365 days of your usage. And it is important to keep in mind that because there are some implications as to how you have to plan ahead in terms of deciding how many licenses you need and things like that. We chose to use the 12 months moving average as base for the compliance mechanism of vSphere 5 because it provides a better mechanism to take into account the actual persistent usage of the product without penalizing for temporary spikes. And so with the help of this example here at the top, I'd like to review a few guidelines, right, to take into account when you're planning for your monitoring of your licensing for vSphere 5. So in this particular scenario, we have upgraded 6 licenses of Enterprise Plus, creating a pool of about 576 gigabytes. And the pool is highlighted in the chart by the red line. The blue line shows you the daily usage, right? A little spiky and curvy line. And the green line shows you the 12 months moving average. Now, based on what we just said, when you look at the chart visually, it means that compliance is guaranteed if the green line is below the red line. Now, we have upgraded the 6 licenses. We start using the product, load some VMs, power on some VMs. This creates some usage, daily usage, and the average starts to get calculated. Nothing happens until essentially the green line surpasses the red line. But there are a couple of scenarios that I'd like to discuss with you so that you get more comfortable with this concept. First of all, if the daily usage surpasses the pool capacity, there aren't any immediate needs for adding additional licenses, right? Like in this case, a couple of months after you upgraded, you add 80 gigabytes of VRAM utilization because you virtualize another piece of your infrastructure. This turns out to be a permanent usage. It's going to be there for forever or for a long period of time. But in the short term, it doesn't require you to add any additional licenses, even if the daily usage goes above the VRAM pool capacity. As we said, you want to look at the 12 months moving average for that. It also means that over the course of time, the moving average will start converging towards this, stable usage of your environment. Therefore, at some point down the line, it is likely that it will reach the same level as the daily usage, provided that there are no other changes. The second important thing to think about are the spikes, right? In a virtual environment, there's likely to be, a lot of transient VM, part on, part off. Maybe you have some, you're doing some experiments and you consume a lot of capacity at a given point in time. And so you create and generate a spike in your environment in terms of VRAM usage. And again, just like the permanent use increase, the spikes do not necessarily require immediate licensing. What you have to factor in is the duration of the spikes. The longer the spike lasts, the more likely it is that down the line your average will converge to those values. So if it's just a temporary thing, you're most likely not going to see a lot of variation on your moving average. Now, if you look at this chart, you may be wondering, well, the green line has actually crossed over the red line, and so at this point I'm out of compliance. And that would be true for any year with the exception of the first one. The first one from the first upgrade is actually a special year because you need 365 values of your daily usage to actually generate the first value of the moving average. And therefore, for the first year, you're really not required to license your capacity above the 12 months moving average until the 365th day. Now, we advise and recommend that you don't fall back too much because you may have a big licensing need come day 365. But it's also true that there's no specific need to license upfront before that day comes. At the 365th day, like in this case, we add additional capacity to bring back compliance. And in this particular case, we just add a couple of licenses of Enterprise Plus. This increases the total pool to 768 gigabytes and restore compliance. From this point going forward, you will always have to make sure that the green line stays below the red line. And in this particular case, again, once the usage goes above the total capacity, you will have to start planning ahead and see if that increase in utilization will last a long time, and therefore, down the line, you need additional licenses. Having said that, let's now see what tools you have available to monitor and manage your usage, both in terms of VRAM entitlement as well as in terms of CPU capacity. You can do this by leveraging the reporting tab of the licensing module in vCenter Server. So let's dive a little bit into what type of reporting capabilities you have available. On the top left corner of the tab, you have the controls to generate reports. You can select which vCenter server you want to generate the report from. And the time period, right? There is a set of predefined time periods, and it's also customizable. Once you run and select run the report, having selected the time period, then something like the bottom part of this slide shows up. I also want to remind that it's probably going to take a few hours after the first upgrade for vCenter to be able to generate this data, right? It's not going to be immediately available. vCenter has to monitor the environment for a few hours before being able to actually pull the data from the environment and present it to you in the report. So normally it takes just a couple of hours. Once the report is created, you have a set of bar charts at the top. The first two bar charts in this particular example are the bars that report on VRAM usage. We licensed the environment with two editions, so you have two pairs of bar charts, one for Enterprise Plus and one for Standard. If you just license with one edition, you're only going to see one pair of bar charts. If you have even more, it's going to be more than that. The two bars, the darker bar shows the average usage for the time period that you selected initially. The light bar shows the daily usage of your VRAM consumption. The next set of bars in the chart show your CPU capacity utilization. As we said, each key brings a certain number of has a certain number of CPU capacity associated with it. You may not be using all the CPU capacity you already have deployed in vCenter Server, and so you want to also be able to monitor that. And so in this particular case, you see again the CPU capacity consumption for Enterprise Plus and Standard. At the bottom, if you select one of the elements on the y-axis, you can show and see the details of that particular chart. So in this case, we selected the first bar, the one we've seen before, for Enterprise Plus VRAM usage. And at the bottom, you see all the details about the usage on that particular pool of VRAM. Here on the left, you have your average VRAM usage for the time period. So it's, in this case, 228 gigabytes. You see the total amount of capacity for your pool. And again, this is equal to the number of CPUs times the base entitlement for that particular edition. So in this case, we had 6 CPUs of Enterprise Plus licenses, 96 gigabytes each, will give you 576 gigabytes of total pool. I want to reiterate the fact that you don't need to use all the CPUs in a key to be able to leverage all the VRAM capacity of that particular license key. As long as you have one active CPU running on that particular license key, then the whole capacity of the key is added to the VRAM pool. So in this particular case, we're using only 4 of the 6 keys because we licensed 2 hosts with 2 CPU each of the 6 CPUs, 6 CPU capacity that this key has, but the whole amount of the VRAM pool is available for you to use it. Last thing you can do from the details here is set alert thresholds if you want to get early warning once your usage goes above a certain level. If you select that, this pop-up comes out, and you can specify what threshold in terms of VRAM consumption you want to receive an alert from. So we set it to 200. As you remember, our usage was 228. So the moment we set that threshold, you see how the report changes. There are a number of alerts coming out. At the top, it says that the threshold has exceeded on a particular vCenter server, and down in the middle, you see which edition has exceeded the total. And there's also a little bit of details as to how much that threshold is equivalent to in terms of percent utilization. This is what vCenter Server provides built in. But as we said, we will also make available an additional tool, a free download that can be installed into vCenter as you would do with VUM. And this tool provides complementary capabilities to give you a richer experience if you want to do a more in-depth analysis of your historical trending. It will be available from the URL that you see there I would say, by the end of the month, right? That's more or less what our developers have told us so far. So in a very short term. This tool resembles a lot what you would what would be Google Finance in terms of usage and things that you'd see coming out. You can generate the report in terms of usage trends by edition, and you can show multiple editions on the same chart. So in this case, we selected Enterprise Plus, and Standard. And what the chart will show is essentially a trended line of your usage by edition, together with, and I'm not sure you guys can see it from there, but hopefully you can. Together with the overall capacity that you have by edition. So the full line shows your daily usage. The dotted line shows the available capacity for that particular edition. The red bars here, this intervals, show the time period where the daily usage went above the VRAM capacity pool for that particular edition. And this is particularly important because, as we said, if you have a prolonged spike over the available capacity, it will likely be that down the line your moving average will also be exceeding your total capacity. You can select the time period up here for which you want to generate the report, or you can use the bars here at the bottom like you would do with Google Finance to just move the time period back and forth, or expand it or shrink it. At the bottom, you have a summary bar. On the left side, the summary bar shows the data relative to the period that you selected. So it will show your average consumption, your available pool, will give you a bar chart of your utilization. On the right side, you have information about your daily usage. So this bar here shows what you're actually consuming today, which could be different than what displayed in the historical trending, and will also show the available VRAM as of today. At the bottom here, you will see the details for today's utilization. So again, the red areas here with the red highlighted historical consumption is for the time period where the consumption exceeded the available pool. All right, so wrapping up here, at this point we reviewed all the four key elements that relate to licensing in terms of customer journey upgrading from 4 to 5 or from 3.5 to 5. The four key things we reviewed were how do you evaluate your licensing needs prior to upgrading using the vSphere Licensing Advisor, how you retrieve your license keys from the licensing portal. As Creighton was mentioning, vSphere 5 requires new license keys. After deploying vSphere 5 and upgrading your vCenter server, we've reviewed how to deploy vSphere 5 keys that you generated from the licensing portal. And lastly, once you have a fully licensed environment, we reviewed how to use vCenter Server 5 and the new add-on to monitor and report on your license usage. As we said initially, there are a set of resources available to you, both online and here at VMworld, to learn more about the new licensing model and also to learn how to upgrade, as well as to do certain necessary configuration. For example, if you plan to use the vCenter Server virtual appliance to manage your environment. At VMworld, we have licensing experts at the Genius Bar if you have specific questions, and there will also be a repeat of this session on Tuesday. At this point, we would ask you to remember to evaluate this survey and this session and fill out the survey using your mobile device and the application on your mobile device for VMworld 2011. And we'll wrap up, give you back 15 minutes so that you can go to your next session, and we'll stick around for additional questions here if you guys need. Thank you.